Just like the code setup video I presented earlier, for the methods on the collections class, this is another video which will set up code for upcoming videos, this time for sets. As before, if you want an extra independent challenge, then stay with me and try this out. If you want to sit this one out, I'll review the code quickly at the start of the next video, and the code will be in the resources section of both videos for you to download if you prefer doing it that way. In this example, I'll be using hash sets as fields, and I'll use the scanner class, which I've used many times before. In this code, I'll be using scanner with just a string passed to the constructor. It works similarly. If you want to see this in action, be sure to follow along. Eventually, I'll cover reading input from files, although the code in this video won't be doing that. Using scanner this way gives you a taste for a way to do this without the file complexities which I'll cover later. Again, the purpose of having a separate setup video here is to keep the new topic material more on point later. In this challenge, you need to create a contact class that has the fields, name, a string, emails, a hash set of string, and phones, another hash set of string. This class should have 4 constructors. The first just takes a name. The second should have name and a single email of type string. The third constructor should also have 2 arguments, name, and the second parameter being a long, which represents a 10-digit phone number. Lastly, the fourth constructor that should do most of the work, the last in your chain, in other words, should take name, a single email, and a single phone. This last constructor should do the following. Add the email argument to the email set if email is not null. Transform the phone argument along if it's not 0 to a string in the format 12345678890, for example. Add the transformed phone to the phone set. This class should also include 3 public instance methods, a getter for name, an override for the toString method, which will print the name, set of emails, and set of phones in a simple form. Finally, include a method called merge contact data that takes a contact and returns a new contact instance, which merges the current instance with the contact passed. I've only just started the conversation about sets and hash sets, but you should be able to set up emails and phones as shown for this challenge. The contact data class is going to emulate getting data from an external source, but instead of an external source, I just want you to set this data up with 2 different text blocks in the format shown on this slide. This data purposely has duplicates. Create a method named getData that takes a string type, either phone or email, and returns a list of contact. Now I'm going to use scanner to pass the data in these text blocks. You're welcome to try another approach. My reason for using scanner is twofold. First, I want to demonstrate this variation, and second, I want you to imagine this data coming from an input file or a database. Input-output and database access are for a later section, but this code simulates getting data from an external source. However you do it, you want to pass this data, creating a contact for each row, and return the list. You want to return the list separately, meaning return a list of phones or a list of emails based on the type passed to this method. Okay, so that's what I'll be doing in the next part of this video, and I'll use the resulting code for upcoming videos for sets and maps. If you want to try this on your own, pause the video here and go off and see what you can do. When you're ready, come back and we can go through this together. But if you want to skip the usual class setup with constructors and getters and so forth, that's good too. In that case, move on to the next video. Don't worry, you won't be missing any content I haven't already covered or won't cover shortly. I'm going to start with a new project called Sets and Maps. First, I'll create the contact class and I'll put that in the dev.lpa package. I want 3 fields on this class, which I described on the slide, name as string and emails and phones, both declared as sets and assigned new hash set instances. I'm going to make emails and phones both hash sets because I don't want duplicates in my contact data. Next, I want a series of constructors. I'm going to set most of these up manually because my constructor arguments aren't going to match up with my fields. I'll use IntelliJ's tools to generate the first one, which has an argument for just name. But I don't want to set the name field here. Instead, I want to chain another constructor I haven't yet created, one with 2 arguments, and I'll pass name and null for email. Don't worry, some of these constructors won't compile until I complete all 4 constructors. I'll copy that constructor and paste it below. I'll add another parameter for this one. That's going to be string and email, and I'm going to chain this to a 3-argument constructor, defaulting 0 as the phone as the third argument. I'm going to paste that first constructor again. I'll add phone as a long in the parameters, and then I'll add it to the 3 constructor call. For the last constructor, I'm just going to manually type this one out and talk through it. As I stated in my challenge slides, this will have name and email, both strings, and phone is defined as a long. Okay, name is easy. I'm just assigning it the method argument. Next, I want to add the email passed to this constructor to the email set on this class only if email is not equal to null. Adding the phone is a bit more complicated because it's a long and it needs to be a string formatted in a specific way. If the phone number isn't greater than 0, I won't do anything. If it is greater than 0, I'll create a string out of it using the value of method, passing it the phone argument. I'll then set up a formatted string and pass the first 3 digits, then the next 3, and the final 4, which is how phone numbers are formatted in some US entries. Then I'll simply add that local variable to the phone set. Okay, so that's all the constructors. Now I have the 3 methods I need to code. First, a getter for name, so I'll generate that. I also want a toString method. I want to replace that line with my own formatted string. Like lists, I can pass sets right to a println call or to the formatted method as I show here. Okay, I've got one last method. It'll be public and will return a contact. I'll name it merge contact data, and the parameter will be a contact called contact. I'll create a local variable, also a contact, and assign that a new contact instance, passing the name to that constructor. Return the new contact, but I still have some work to do in this method. I also want to include the emails and phones from both contacts, so I'll set the emails on the new contact to be a new hash set, passing it the current instance's emails. I'll do the same thing for the phones, passing it the phones which are on the current instance. At this juncture, this code is really just cloning the data by using all the data from the current instance to create a new contact. To make it a merge, I want to add the emails and phones from the contact passed to this method. To do that, I can just call out all on the new contact's emails field and pass it the emails on the contact that is passed to this method. I'll do the same thing for phones. Okay, so that completes the contact class. Hopefully, if you took the challenge, you built something similar. Now I want to do the second part of the code setup, and that's to create a contact data class that would simulate a data reader of some kind. In our case, this is just going to read data from static strings, but you could imagine we would be reading this data from a file, a database, or obtain the data from some kind of service provider. In this same package, I'll create a new class named contact data. I'll create 2 static text fields using text blocks, one for phone data and one for email data. Initially, both fields will be empty. I'm just going to paste this data in. Okay, so next I want a method to read this data, emulating reading it from a file or retrieving it from an external source. This is going to be a public static method called getData. It'll take a string, which will identify if it's retrieving phone or email data, and it'll return a list of contacts. I'll set up a local variable called datalist, which will be a list of contact, and instantiate a new array list. I'll return that newly created array list. It's time to set up my scanner. If the type is phone, I'll pass in the phone data text block to the constructor, otherwise I'll pass in the email data text block. You've seen scanner before with system.in, but it can also be used with any string, including a multi-string text block, which is what I'm doing here. There are other ways to split this data by new lines and so forth, and I'll show you these examples in future videos. I wanted to write the code this way as a sort of mock file read, if you will. Now I can use the scanner functionality to treat the string like any input stream. I'll use a while loop to continue looping while hasNext on the scanner is true. I'll call nextLine to get the next string and split that on a comma, passing it to a local variable data, an array of strings. I'll pass the array to the asList method on arrays so that I can use the replace all method, passing it the method reference for the trim method on string. This is going to trim leading and trailing white space from each of the strings in my text block. I could have also used strip indent there, but I've formatted my text block itself without indents, so I won't worry about it for simplicity. Next, I want to create specific types of contacts based on the type passed. If type is phone, I'll add a new contact using the constructor that takes name, which is the first comma delimited element in both of my text block elements. I'll also pass it the phone number, which I first need to pass, using pass long on the long wrapper. The phone number is the second comma delimited element in my text block. If the type is email, I'll just pass the second comma delimited element as is, which is the email as a string. And that's it. That's the setup. I want to do some testing, so let's write some code for that. I'll add a public static print method on the main class. I'll call it print data, and it'll take a string, a header, as well as a collection with a type of contact. This prints the header between some separator lines and then uses for each to print each contact. Next, I'll test this out. In the main method, I'll create a list of contact called emails and assign that the result of calling getData on my contact data class with email as the type. I'll repeat that for phone, invoking the same method but passing phone as the type. I'll execute my new print data method to print first the phone numbers and then the emails. Running that now to verify if this works. I'm getting the list of phone contacts and the list of email contacts printed out neatly. You can see I have several Mickey Mouses in both lists and a couple of Robin Hoods in the phone list. This is on purpose and I'll explain that in the next video. Okay, so that was the setup challenge. I'll be using this code in the next video to explore sets and merging contacts using sets. Let's move on to that next video.